right? So, as I was saying, I just finished on something else, which is, also, notice as I was talking the previous one, if you don't know what the previous one is because it's a later release, maybe just not following trap, don't really care that much, but if I can make it somewhat easily, especially say, it said they would move to travel. I'm on history. It just said they would move to travel. This is the thing that I was about to report this time. Okay, notice it any difference with that before? So what now? No, there's nothing. There's no confrontation. It's not a big deal. Just saying there was in a trap, and I could stay in the front and didn't have to remove everything, which is a surprisingly courteous act to do, because at least for the first day I would take everything out. Not sure. Yeah. So that's the thing. Again, as I said, surprisingly courteous or everything. Except that at the end of the day, I think that this might be part of something else, but that's in speculation. As for the rest, and I noticed my behavior and the way that I was talking, kind of like we just witnessed in the beginning of this. And part of that is because what happens other times. Part of that is this crime itself, and most of it is the things that she blowing for the air. Okay. Also, the fact that I still didn't finish my breakfast. Again, the fact that I still didn't get to do anything. I've been doing time after time reporting on the things that they do to me, and throughout. And it's working, which is almost worse, because if it wasn't working good, if I wasn't able to actually carry that properly. But I can. So it's time to man up, right? And so I could use that as an excuse, but again, criminals be taking that as a suggestion, and you're gonna see how much that suggestion is gonna play out, because I'm not the same person that I was. I wish I was more different, but certainly not the same. So I was mentioning about the approach on the days that allowed me to figure out the backup. So I was feeling pain, I was moving, and I found this place that I sit down, transfer the files. There's even this female, again, a very well-off place, just offers a pizza, but I didn't end up eating the pizza because I was busy. My words were, I don't know if they put something in. I don't know if they didn't. If they did, I would actually eat and record myself, because I don't think there's anything like poison. That could be something sedative, would be a bad assumption there. So I would stop working and I wouldn't finish my job. So I say job, my duty, essentially, to report on those things, to finish the backup. I guarantee that the evidence kept safe. And finished. Then I was gonna eat. But then many vehicles kept passing very close to me at high speed, lifting up a lot of things, so it was covered in a coat of dirt. So I actually ended up eating it. Just left it there. I was very hungry. And I didn't know if the bus company is going to take me. I didn't know if I have a place where we're going to sleep, because they kept doing this crime again. There was a different company than this, but this one was there as well. But that one was frequent. It was almost all the time. Pretty bizarre. And there was a company when inside the bus. If you use a bus, it goes to Santa Terezinha, it's another city. There are other city nearby that I mentioned. The guy owns everything between. Which, by the way, I always assumed that it was even a cooperative, like it was owned by many small landowners. Maybe I was wrong. So either way, my point is, that's what he said to the police, and that's what the police officer said to me. So again, maybe they're all lying, but I'm just relaying that because of those reasons. Yeah, it was a day when I was doing the backup, and it said to a police officer that I had been there for 15 days, eating food that I was just planting and waiting to grow again, apparently. And because there's no way to buy food around there. So 15 days. Funny enough, because 5 days prior to that, I was in the mall, very in public, in the eating area in front of everybody, and recording a video on YouTube as well. No, not for YouTube, it was for again, I don't think it had been published. No, they were. Again, it was always published as private. They've been doing that since I think March. Yeah, it was March. Since around that period. And this guy literally says to a police officer, he was being here for 15 days, and I know that because I was starting the harvest then. So this is another point, because it's not confusion. Confusion would be the type of thing where you don't know if you remember quite well. Referencing to something you did in your own life, why it allows you to remember that, that is a lie. That was a conscious choice. And I can tell you, he told me to leave, even though everybody was being exceedingly nice in order to have a catch that someone to me up to that point. I've spent there from the 8th to the 12th, so 4 days, right? And well, the 7th. I think it was definitely the 8th. So the 8th to the 12th. And for the 15th, they said. On the 7th, I was in the mall, again, in the eating area, doing something that, like, in front of everybody. And I'm very distinguishable, again. It's not like I'm hard to miss, easy to miss. So, at the end of the day, interesting assumption. Most people would not make that assumption knowing they was making those things live. But keep in mind the intent to deceive is very real, and they're not very smart. So they might actually try to argue that instead of being on the mall, and while you're going through those videos, I film often, I take screenshots, and I show screenshots of the date and everything else, and you're going to try to lie saying that I was there. Again, this is the level of this crime. This is what the pressure and the things that go through my mind the entire time, right? So I so explicitly you see the intent to deceive, and I make that very clear these days, and why this is necessary. Also, I make the previous one public, and then done then private temporarily, just to make sure that the proper either exists, then it cannot be tampered with by them, right? And then he said that, and then on that day, a guy was trying to point a gun at me. It was complicated. It's a long story. And by the way, this is not the U.S. Guns are controlled here. It's a very big deal. He identified as being a police officer as well, even though mildly. The random dude early. Not this guy, but said he was the order of this guy. Later on the afternoon, and when he did that, I was like standing and said, "Hey, don't come close." And I was like, "Okay." So I was standing there. By the way, that's a street where I saw a school bus passing, a bunch of vehicles passing, a van passing, a tourism van passing. So my assumption was, I don't even know this is private. There's no fence, there's no gate, I never jump anything, there's not even a sign saying private property. It's an open field coming out of a public street. Which, by the way, he also said later in the way, in the 12th, he also said this street that goes to the airport is also his. With a sign saying, a street sign saying, this way go to that city, the other city, there is a road between two cities. It's a vicinal road, it's not the main, it's not the interstate. Maybe claim that he also has concession over the interstate between the two cities. Whatever it was. The important part, though, is the police officer said to me that this time a real police officer in uniform and in the vehicle, said that it was his, so that's why I'm relaying that to you. As information was given to me, and also considering video, as usual. As for and by the way, made some interesting references to this crime, the police officer, but other than that, it was actually surprisingly standard, and I couldn't comment on much too bad as far as the police officer go. On the other guy, though, because he lied to him, and to be fair, I don't blame the police officer for believing him that, because, again, why would a random dude that owns apparently all the land in this place try to lie about one person who, well, according to himself, is not doing anything wrong? Because he's also said that to the cop. Because, again, I could disprove it otherwise, so, so why would he lie? So I don't blame the cop for believing him, even though I know that the cop probably knew the truth. I do blame the guy who lied to the police, who then showed up there first off earlier on the time when the phone wasn't working because it was doing backups. You know what I say about disconnecting everything, disconnecting from the internet, making sure the backup is as safe as possible to guarantee that there no interferences, no tampering? Yeah. And there was these ditches that they dig next to there. This plot of native land in the middle of the farm that seems to always be, anyway. And it has this bunch of holes around it on the ground. And was putting the phone inside one of those holes, so the same logic that I said before. Photons struggle to go through ground more than they struggle to go through air, right? Simple logic. And also the hole is very uneven, so even reflecting inside would be difficult. It's very ideal to preserve access. Only when I start doing that, on the next day, is when you see this major thing being done by them. One day after, I managed to what presumed to be safe backups that they couldn't tamper with. The owner of the land decided, also pay attention to the airport. Some very interesting airplanes sticking out, especially finishing up directions certain ways in an interesting way. Just curiosity. Again, just talk about whistleblowing, just take that as a grain of salt. That's not an accusation, it's just something that if I was an investigative officer, I would check out the flight blog. The issue is, but I don't have any knowledge, it's just a hunch. And that's a proper airport for what I checked when I looked up, probably registered for the Federal Aviation. I don't know how it's called in this country. So either way, moving forward, it's not like a strip land. The Jesus Christ function. I was leaving. Again, this doesn't get mentioned in the reviews or anything because again, it's not my concern. It's not the concern of this crime. But since we're talking about crimes and interactions with that, I just think it's worth it to mention here. But you're not gonna see that in the videos I made there. You see a lot of them drugging me and different things on me, but you're not gonna mention this. I think best to pass it, because again, it's not my concern. As I said, what I do is I document the crimes done to me. Either way. And besides, it's not like I'm saying anything. It's just something that I don't know. Focusing again on the thing. I just have aviation aficionado and a couple things you know and a couple things you get. The issue is the fact is Jesus Christ, I cannot. You're seeing this, right? That's my concern. Remember how earlier I said time spent to get it to function and how much that's going to work, and they're taking that as a suggestion for drugs equivalent to that. That's the point. As of the next day, as I was doing backups and trying to get away from the police for the drugs on me, this dude shows up, and that was an incident with a gun earlier when like I said, she stayed far away, and then he shows a gun to me, which was like, and I was concerned because in my memory I was getting close, and then when he did it, a rifle no less, which again, it's a controlled arms country. But after I paused and I stayed and I said, okay, I don't know any harm. I don't want to do any harm. And I was standing there. Then he decided to open the door of a pickup truck and show a rifle as if saying what? Like, what is the point? If I was getting close to him, that's a different story entirely. But he told me to stop and I stopped. And that's when he struggled to open the door to show the gun. What? I mean, the intention is clear. It's supposed to be an intimidation, which is illegal in this country. You cannot do that, it turns out. Again, it's a controlled arms country. You can use that for people who are authorized that to use that for defense, and if I was doing something that would require it, stopping and complying is not one of those things. And again, this place has no fence. I didn't jump a fence. I didn't do anything illegal at that point. That's a major point. Trespassing requires knowledge. If you don't even bother to put something to let the person know that you're trespassing, even a sign, you're not trespassing. Okay? Now, if I were to return, there'll be different knowledge because I would do the thing and I don't intend to return that necessarily, at least not before I start going. Things we're going to handle when you're going to handle it. But as of that, there was nothing illegal. Once he told me, I said, hey, look, he said you leave up to 5, and I said, okay, can it be 5:30? Because I'm just finishing the things, and it's just about time to finish. So by the way, I don't know how safe the backup property even was, but what choice do I have? That's why I took those things down when they get uploaded immediately and getting guaranteed things as safe as possible. Because the backup about finishes when 5:09, you see this guy showing up doing this. What kind of person flips to the side of a pickup truck as you arrive in Trench Park doing this when you bring in police officers to remove someone? You're spending a lot of public money because police officers are spending fuel and time that they at least presumably should be doing something else. Yeah, people are not always the most work loaded throughout this place. But go to there to remove someone, which is also important because 9 minutes past 5, right? So presumably, assuming he had in good faith, which given that he lied, you know if I should assume that, it took the police 9 minutes to show up in a minor case where you have not even disturbance. You have a guy you want to remove from private patch who he probably had to say to the police he was refusing to leave, which was not true. I said 5:30 and he agreed to that. He didn't oppose to that at all. And a normal person would just say, no, dude, it has to be 5. And I would think that that's draconian, and I would talk a lot about that being draconian to you, but I would have complied. I said 5:30, and he nodded to me. Notably with no words, because they think that audio matters more than words. And you guys, based on what you just saw, and the fact you lied to the police about a time when I was literally in public in the mall, and you decide who is more trustworthy or not. Simple as that. Again. And as a simple way to know, in the same way that he remembered that for his normal life, there was not a single period of 15 days that I spent away from the mall. And say, that's what you want, it's sad reality for what it is. But it is true. There's no single period of a single full week that I had not gone there at least once. Which again, said as he will. So the simple fact that they will remember that in the mall. Because it's such a, again, I kind of have to miss. And in 15 days is a long period. So that was a lie to police about a guy that was, by his own account, not doing anything bad. He just wanted out. He told me to leave. I asked for 30 minutes more than what I asked. And he says he owns all the land from here to there. So he's normally just abusing homeless person at face value. In practice, it's just part of this crime. Again, asked to do to undesirables, as I was saying in the previous one. Right? And there was also some reference to the police when they kept talking to each other very arrogantly as I was closing my things, because again, we left about the same time. This started at 5:09. I finished up closing all the things, and interacting that was about 5:20, 25. So, how was the time that I asked again to leave? Now, this motherfucker had an actual pickup truck, which could have helped me move out, but literally at this point, that is way beyond asking. I even asked the police, not the guy, but asked the police if we could, and they said no, only if you're being arrested, they're also gonna go in the cop car, which is a lie, but it's fine. No, I don't know if it's a lie, actually. I don't know the procedure here. In other countries, probably it'll be true. But there was even some type of smiling and giggling about that, which not warranted and not professional and not a big deal. I'm just saying, this is not a natural interaction with law enforcement. As they were there talking to each other and looking down on me, mention things about referencing to me or being a beggar and other things like this, which is not warranted, but I didn't listen to that, so I cannot make that as a proper accusation. That's what it felt like they were talking about, but because it's not fully, I didn't fully understand, what I can say for sure that I did heard was specifically references. I described them, I don't remember them by now, but I described it word by word, which the police officer said, which is one of those references for full sentence of like 5 to 7 words to this crime. It's long enough. And I think it was just done to showcase that they was involved in this. I don't really know what they think of that. Well, I mean, more power to that. Yeah, that is not unuseful. That is not useful. Never picked up the police report. I actually wanted to pick up the police report. Everything was filmed, and the film is on YouTube, so they could have lied in the police report. That would be major. That would be an actual crime. So instead, I think it was just more of ambiguous language, which is too useful for you to see, so I should pick it up. I just have to go to the police station to do that, and that's it. That's all I need. But I presumably some type of documentation, which I don't know if I would have, because my document is still not done. Probably have pictures of me, I suppose, in the police station, right? I mean, no, actually, only if you have file there. Which naturally wouldn't have had. I don't know how it will work, and if we'll be able to pick it up. You can pick it up like in the future for sure. Especially if something were to be done to me, I'll go to some crime where I cannot do that myself. You would expect law enforcement itself or someone in some type of law enforcement to
do that under the guise of crime investigation, and then you have disclosure for the press because, no secret court anymore, at least not by the Constitution, if that's followed or not. I believe no secret court. I believe the secrecy and other things is shady at times, but the issue is with now the press on top of it. So at the end of the day, you can see, but this is so minor. See how notice first off, you see the major impact of the conscience. I was trying to force through, and I forced through, but then it comes this. What difference does it make? I even said that I don't hold too much of that in law enforcement. They didn't do any, like they didn't put their hands on me. Granted, I didn't lack of compliance. I didn't refuse to leave, so I comply on everything. But I'm saying that there was no other major things because, again, I didn't do, but that's what I'm saying. Many things don't happen the way they're supposed to. Nothing at least happened the way they're supposed to, other than the minor references. That's what I'm saying. That doesn't matter. Because of that, it's just okay. It's day as usual, right? The guy who lied to police is a big deal, and I was talking about that. But then I got distracted. And that's my point. Early on, when I was saying, you could notice as I was talking that they were throwing something on me. I could barely keep track of my mind. But then I poised through. Right now, it happened, and I didn't even notice until now. I was focusing on something that doesn't matter, including this now. That's the impact of the more the psychological drugs. I mean, not so much the torture drugs, which you feel in pain, you know you feel in pain. But the other ones, and it's so much to do. When I called Tanya times, all I wanted was just talk to someone who just, first off, you want to see something really sick, it's going to make you sick to your stomach. When I was talking to Tanya, one day I was in one of the hotels, paying $100 a night. They were offering torture drugs inside the hotel room. It was the one downtown. It was the one in the street that passes right to the bus stop. No, the bus stop in front of Praça da Paz, Peace Square. There's by Avenida Brasil corner with the street that goes straight into the bus stop. If you walk down the street next to the hotel, you see the bus stop at the end of the street the entire time. The street by Juscelino Kubitschek, in front of the square. There's the only street in front of the square. The only stop in front of the square. It's on both sides. So much so that if you get out of the street and you turn to your right, it's going to be the other stop to the other side. But as you're going down the street, seeing the stop, it is going up south. Yeah, up south because it's hill. Then passing in front of the church and so on. That hotel, they're throwing torture drugs on me. Inside. Also in the street, mind you. And because I left to buy something to eat and I was feeling pretty sick. And I just talked in one of the videos. It's going to be the sick version of the Truman Show and gives a pretty good glance to understand a couple things. And I said, I just wanted her to tell me if things going to be okay. Just that. Just tell me that everything's going to be okay. And then you see a message from Tanya, something along those lines. I'm trying to talk to her, and she being the bitch she always is. And she writes that, just something along those lines. And I was like, that wasn't published. That wasn't shared. That wasn't called to anyone. I didn't even reference that and called to her. I just talked that in offline record. Never forget that one. So you talk about the Truman Show when you have YouTube recommendations changed by things that I say in offline recording through the work of the devil, right? Or criminals who interfering with the Google API, which I'm quite sure the Google's be thrilled to know and not gonna offer you any help at all, right? But instead you have especially because it's YouTube as well, so it's all inside the Google platform, both the app and the system. As for the which massive ads, massive private data, again, I explained that before why Google is probably going to be a certain help for you. Again, they function like any other corporation. To have the very news outlet that is reporting a crime saying they as a company provided help to identify the problem and they fixed it already so nobody else suffers from it, sounds way different than the very manufacturer saying that their own product is good. Right? I mean, most manufacturers tend to share the principle. And on the other hand, you're going to have in-depth expertise about something from the guys who literally made the thing. and probably has on the call the guy who literally designed that feature, because again, Android was designed a couple decades ago. So while we have some PCC probably reutilizing something that someone else created from another country and applying to this crime, you're gonna have the guys who literally manufacture the original system who probably understand those things. And if all you have to do to have the full support is to put a note in the file saying that they helped, and most importantly, that whichever falls there, that they will personally fix, and you kind of, and I mean, I would say it's a bargain. And that's, again, it's not, as for the rest, this is like the equivalent to that, to like life. I don't know. I don't know why she fought about doing it. She has access to the things. There's some criminal talk to her, but suffice to say, this level of sickness is what this crime is all about. You see that happening all the time. That's what leads. See if he doesn't feel the same way. A criminal should make a reference. That was something that my father used to say to me before I would sleep. To me, a fucking fag at age 70-something in the shopping mall over there in the eating area, just getting close to me and look at me in the eyes, well recorded, mind you, although you're not seeing his face at that time, you see the face after. It was on this phone, it was on Hank Boy, the other phone. And saying that to me, or saying that close to me, what kind of human being does that? And again, the same father that in the hospital as a terminal cancer patient, the nurses, not random dudes passing by the hallway, said specifically that's ink he's spilling out from his mouth. The terminal cancer patient that was in Santa Marta Hospital in Niterói. Because as I said, such two undesirables, right? The thing is, it was unthinkable to those criminals that even though that he chose the health insurance on purpose, he hadn't been identified with cancer yet. That's the whole point as to why potentially he died, because they weren't actually identifying that, which I think he might have been part of this crime or not. But because he was not identified with that, then he could create a new insurance because he hadn't had any priors, right? Can only dip once in this crime. As dark as it is in this context, it's one or the other. Reality doesn't cut both ways, right? Or reality always cuts both ways in a way. So if he has no priors, and if he has a prior, then you know what it is, then you could heal. So I believe that at that point he didn't actually fully know what he had, but I think that the doctors that would be knowledgeable on this crime, because again everybody seems to know, would have glanced at it. I don't know how much they communicate with each other. I know they use social media, so could have been talks of that. Either way, he created a health insurance that gave him the right to be in the hospital. That was a couple meters from my home. My home over there, as I mentioned, Santos Moreira, 64, or St. Patrick's Alley, 15, is right by the hospital, Santa Marta Hospital in Niterói, Rio de Janeiro. And that's why father chose their health insurance on purpose, right? But for the criminals, it was unthinkable that Tanya could be with him most of the time and then go back to home to prepare lunch and eat lunch herself, eat dinner herself. She was sleeping in the hospital, so I was by myself. And that was impossible because such is two undesirables. And then they kept trying to move him back and forth to Rio de Janeiro on the other side, on the other city, Niterói, in front of Rio de Janeiro, the actual capital of the state. And probably the city most people know, and if not from here. The state is named after the city, and that's NYC. But the issue is in rush hour, he was suffering chemotherapy, not radiotherapy. Which means the equivalent is a small box with a bunch of flasks in it. They were moving a cancer patient to end up dying less than a month after. During rush hour, to stay in what Tanya herself described. You know, Tanya was already trying to help them. Tanya at this point was serving me spoiled food because apparently it was funny for the criminals. But then again, suffering this level of abuse, you can understand. She's a victim at that point, at least. She had to go a long process to help them so much they would consider her a criminal like them. It was always very clear to me that the things that they're doing to her and she was witnessing being done to her husband, as he was terminal with cancer, would probably have an influence in the fucking... Yeah, it's not so much about screaming or anything else. It's about keeping my mind in place or else
I lose track. And he was crossing the street, crossing the bridge at rush hours, because they were doing that at rush hours, as you do, to undesirables. And it was very uncomfortable for him because he couldn't move a doctor and an anesthetist. Not even a doctor, technician that does chemotherapy, and an anesthetist who doesn't deal with anesthetics. Instead, with a small bag with flasks inside. And he was not even the only patient for chemotherapy. I'm quite sure there's another one as well in the hospital. But I cannot testify to that. I think I heard something along those lines, but they were doing different days. And because apparently, clearly, you prefer to move a cancer patient with such hardship instead of delaying the treatment 2 days, even though there were several times when the doctor wouldn't show up, right? Because again, it was seen as it was very enraging for criminals that they were going there to treat the patient that they're paid to treat handsomely, mind you, instead of the patient going to them and getting in line and suffering like everybody else because that was the thing. By the way, as for those doctors, just do a little dip into the health practice done by health professionals in this country. When I cut my finger, as I was trying to remove the screen on this phone to replace because they destroyed it, and I went to the hospital in this city, in downtown, and it was just a simple thing as making a patch-up. The room was empty. It was empty. There was nothing happening at all. Now, there was some circus that was designed, I think it was something to do with motorbikes, the drug bags. And they instead told me to, with a finger that was dripping blood, because it was enough, they touched probably someplace, it was dripping from the ground, to go to another hospital. This is in the city, Foz do Iguaçu. The hospital is paid by the city. Told me, that's filmed, that's in video, and all the criminals will know and be eyewitnesses to that as it happened. To go to the UPA, the other hospital, it's here actually closer to this place, in Três Lagoas, not Três Lagoas, it's in Três Fronteiras. You know the Vivaldi gas station? Pick up that street, the street of Avenida Nacional, it's pretty close to that, around that, it's inland, it's very long. And they gave them, again, literally, there was a pile, as she was saying that to me, there was a pile of blood forming underneath my feet. This was a patch-up that was finished up when they did it, in 3 minutes. Okay? 3 minutes. And then I had to leave there. I tried to pick up a bus, then the bus company, they refused to stop. Oh, that was documented as it was happening, and they witnessed it. The criminals you see now in the mall, yesterday by face, the criminals you see here by face, witnessed those abuses. I want to hear something better. When I call 911, which is in this country is 190, technically police, but because there's another number for ambulances, because I mean, what kind of person in an emergency wouldn't have ample amount of time to remember which number you actually need to call to go to where? So I called the police, and the phone just nobody picks up, because I mean, what kind of person would expect to dial 911 and someone pick it up always, right? Maybe the guy's just going to grab a coffee. It's not like you'll be in an emergency when you dial that number. As for that's documented, and that was designed to this crime. But it's not even as shocking as what's going to happen after, when it's going to have me dialing directly to the ambulance, such as what number is supposed to be health support, I guess. And it's 192, if I remember right. 193, if I remember right, is firefighters. Back home we used to say that if you have an emergency, you have to call the firefighters, because they're the only ones that show up in less than half an hour. Regardless of what it is, and they call each other there from there. There was some incidents that happened with me back home as well, degrading in things. But you don't need to go too far. Remember things that I talked about health in this country? That's a joke. When I say things like you cannot treat a patient with pneumonia because the MRI machine is broken, it's you just do a little dip and you see how again sick to your stomach you're gonna get, the level of abuses that you see being done. You know, the bus company and how everybody has to wait 1 hour and the bus is overcrowded and it's all okay because they're abusing me in the process. and so on, and so it's okay, those things, and they're the only company allowed, they're doing the service, they charge as much as the people in cities 5 times the size, all of that. When diving to health in other areas, when they paid handsomely, especially the ones that work for the government. And this is not the case, but this is a private thing, which is usually less corrupt to this level. Again, just do a little dip, and you're going to see the sheer level of absurd things. Because it's important, if you're telling that to people, to put that in context with the same people be cool should be done to me, because that's what they go through on those things. Except that they go through those things because those guys just don't give a shit. Wow, the things done to me are done to me deliberately. They're done to me to hurt me. So they would be okay with someone treating their mother, for instance, in a hospital like shit, so long as someone else deliberately does harm to me because that makes them feel good. Those are the criminals whose faces you witness every day. So again, just a little dip. Because they think that, and I saw that, I literally saw that a couple times, and they are nice. As I said, they are super nice. Everything is so wonderful and beautiful in paradise. It's like sitting in the 50s, right? Until the atrocities begin. Until you can pick up Nazi Germany if you wish, the cities where, after the undesirables are dealt with, and after, and right before the bombs start falling, it's wonderful, right? Everything's good, everybody's nice to each other. In this case, until, you actually need to go to a hospital or something, then you see, and again, the level of content and the level of lack of care, those things are obvious, right? Because again, what I said about pneumonia and the MRI machine, again, do a little dip and you see how true that is. Might not be this one specifically, but how true that is in context. Because the reality is, for the most part is that lack of equipment is the standard excuse for everything. Every time that a guy doesn't want to work, doesn't want to do a problem, that's the go-to one. That being said, because it's so generalized, that's not just done by the medics, it's done by the employee, it's done by the maintenance, it's done by the other guys, it's done by everybody, which after a couple of years leads to the whole thing essentially collapsing to the point where at the end of the day, most of those are not lying anymore because things stop functioning. Either way, again, this is a beautiful example of how we used to talk back home. So when they talk about things that were mentioned, by the way, none of those things were published, none of those things were public, none of those things were done with the intent to be public immediately. At best, they'd be memoirs for later, and that was the intention in general. Throughout this entire time, they talking to my home to listen to things like this, and you judge from what you're listening now what you conclude. Because for the most of those criminals' conclusions were that, first off, a couple of those things, the many approaches, amongst them also one that I think is an honorable mention, they're trying to compete or trying to out-compete, so they would be trying to compete either with me for something, which I only identify later, or to defend itself with other countries. To say that, for none of those they actually disputed. The facts not disputed for the most part, because again, you can check, you cross-check your conclusions on truth. But instead is compete saying that other countries suck as well, which again, sorry. This is exactly why you saw me a second ago trying to rein myself in, allowing me to blow out of proportion. That's the fear. That I'm going to digress and then talk about something else that has nothing to do with it. So, I'm just saying, if you glance at the things that I heard, references that I mentioned at home, just dive into that. Cool. Not everything was this, but there was a lot of it. And when you dive into saying something about hate talk, etc., when you hear the things that I just said and check if those things were true or not, because, again, now, is it everything that simple? No, it's not, and it's not obviously applicable to everywhere. The fact is that never gets the dispute of does that actually happen at points or not. Not rarely, we figure out but not necessarily all the time. It's a major point. Okay, because as I said, I witnessed it. I went there, my dropping blood in the ground, I filmed it, so it's one or two options. Either indeed it does happen with some frequency, or they are doing the very discrimination, disenfranchisement. There's no escape to that because you can see that in video. One of the two. 3 minutes to do it. So, is that a 3-minute job that was irresponsible? Any medical professional would have allowed a guy to stay with an open wound, bleeding not only on me, but onto the floor, right? Because blood is contagious. I'll be entering a bus, I'll be walking through the street, I'll be sharing rooms with people, right? I mean, it's a public health hazard, for what it's worth. But most importantly, it's a 3-minute job. There was nothing happening that I could trace this. And even if there was, they could just put me away and finish what they were doing and then deal with that. If something took last time, then go to another fucking hospital with a bus, with loaded, a bus stopping, or a bus doesn't stop. I just saw that. It was not even like you stopped and ran like it happened yesterday. Or took my money and ran like a criminal. And this saw me happen the other day as well. But instead is it was just not stopping, bolted for the bus stop with me waving. Which was actually convenient, because the bus that I waved, just like it's all the time, this is what I mentioned about the Lord helping, and you see the Lord helping throughout this time also. Been talking non-stop, notice my voice? It's a common theme. I heard that it's also something to do with narcotics, so some narcotics cause this when you're talking, and you're throwing it in the air, because of the way that they interact with the throat. What I've been telling that they're throwing on me. Just keep that in mind. As for winds blowing from the front, by the way, not from the back. But continue to talk so you can listen. As I was saying, and you also saw the behavior, because it's not just the approach. After everything you see in this video, judge from that what you will. In the bus, so the bus boats, something. But who do that? It's a fucking 3-minute job. You're quite literally just putting thing. I witnessed that because of how much it took when I did it here. And it was even done by what it seemed like a resident with a Denny next to it. It took 3 minutes. So, in which planet you do that? But maybe it's to me, or maybe it's normal. So, at the end of the day, what you have is a beautiful situation where you either prove the point that I was just mentioning, or you prove the point that I say about me. There's no escape. It's one or the other, because you get to see what happened. And decide which one you think is more untrue. At the end of the day, I'm actually both of them are true, but that's from time to time comes. At very least one is. So, and with witnessing that, and witnessing that to the family members, loved ones, have someone who died on account of this, instead of being angry at that, because it's kind of pointless and nothing usually happens, it's a common theme in this country that nothing changes. Again, from a guy who grew up here, because this is not a racist guy talking about a culture he doesn't understand. This is about a guy who part of that since childhood. So it's a common theme, both political apathy, as well as this notion that nothing ever changes. So there's not much point of bothering with that. But from that, to get angry to someone commenting on those things, it's something that they claim is a big deal. I tell you it's not. I tell you what happens is this sadists thinking that they can get away with hurting people. I mean... plain and simple. Again, this is not a beautiful quote. The movie is not that great, but I love those movies that had those wonderful quotes, like The Last Jedi with the quote in the end by Luke, which is a badass quote in a way that the whole last scene as it goes with interacting with the other guy. And the movie sucks, but either way. The other one is not that great. It's also not that bad, which is like, he's just a bad man. It's not that complicated. You don't need to argue that much. At the end of the day, they just sadists. They hurt people. That's what they do. They enjoy that. And you see them by face. Now, you can argue this, you can argue that. They chose to say to the entire crowd around the world, the free world, that the actual reasoning is they don't like what I say about them, and they think that they should touch me for. And that's what warrants the hell in Argentina that was said openly. No, the First Amendment? Imagine that not just a negation, because negation goes to zero. This is like the inverse of it, That's a defense. That's what they thought the defense would be good. More power to them. I'm just providing not even providing that. I'm just reporting that to you barely through all the tamperings. And even the process to blow it out comes from the press itself, which is, as I said, any reporter, perhaps recent graduate, they would have access to such a thing, because essentially what you have when you have all those things that are often easily dismissible except they're true. And I don't want to mention too much, but I report those things as I do in my part, documented with actual objective ways. And I can imagine how people. Chip, are you sure that that's the place for you to be, baby? He also said that this was like African bees or something like that, or bees. I don't know if those are bees. No, they chased me. They chased me a couple times already. But I don't know if they were there. To me, it feels a lot more like those things, the small, tiny bugs you see around here all the time. They're not bees, but anyway. Something stung me here twice. I don't know if it was that though, if it was something else. Either way. I don't know. So we're talking about. I do apologize. I asked an apology as far as the inability to speak now, and secondly the difficulty to express things. How you notice my mental state deteriorating throughout this entire video, but you get to witness that happening. And throughout that, there's very important things, which is one of them. The fences that they have true, in fact, if you pay attention, they're actually true. That they said to me, not to me, said to each other right next to me about this random other situation that involves a guy being abused by a lot of people who is the only thing also all you heard being said by them. And that this, that, and amongst those things comes this, again, in Czech country that was mentioned many times, but in this country it was also mentioned a couple times. And specifically, they ended up talking about the Concordia incident, right? We're going to comment on that later. Then it's an easy one to remember. Much like leaving the mall yesterday, just for the record, it's almost 10 p.m., 10:30, 10 a.m., and I haven't finished my breakfast yet. It's been this after this after this after this, trying to document as much as I can before my mental state deteriorates enough that I can actually continue that. And you got to witness that happening in this video. You compare that with the previous ones and how I was able to talk. It's not too great, particularly yesterday if you can compare. But you can still see how in the time span of minutes, without consuming anything, while doing anything, just by staying here, you see my mental state deteriorating. And judge from that what you will. Also the sheer amount and how much the amount of things actually overwhelm me. How much I care the day I should not treat it for, and the rest. So, the reason I was so concerned about going to health things, that was always the accounts of those things. And again, but as for Tanya, I also have a glance to what I mentioned about Tanya, how she was a victim at some point, regardless of the things that she does now, and to witness many of those things. And again, before she was a lovely mother, she was very different than what she is now. She'll never do things like where she started doing the traps, because the thing about the spoiled food is not just spoiled food. She never in my life served spoiled food to me, period. Ever. She would buy meat on the supermarket and she would prepare for me, and I'll notice the meat. Wait for that. Again, see if that's not what is done to undesirables. Meat tasted weird. And I'll tell her, Tanya, the meat tastes weird. It tastes as if it's spoiled. And she would say that she had just purchased that. Now I don't have a doubt in my mind that they just sold her spoiled bad food, because you see something similar to that kind of happening. Hell, in Mufasa, you saw not quite there, but you saw them hiding away, not just Mufasa and Americanos as well, hiding away Coca-Cola bottles, hiding away other things so I wouldn't be able to buy. Explain to me how you go from not having any available to selling underpriced because they're about to spoil. Just make that make sense. Because in that Mufasa witness, then going from having none to the point I'm like, seriously, you only have Diet Coke, to then selling them under the price because they're about to expire this month. And I checked, it was like 25th of May, but then it was before that. So not saying them spoil, but it was about to spoil at a massive discount. Which I mean, it's convenient for me. I like to buy it. Hell, I can drink that easily after expiration, because the expiration for the thing it has to be months ahead of time from where actually would be bad. Again, things in this country, just so let's talk about law, in this country, talk about other things. The law usually functions right, it's just that it's not followed. So when you talk about companies like that would follow the law, it's like Coca-Cola, for instance. So the expiration date of those products usually is way earlier than the actual expiration would happen for certain products. You don't talk about food, like meals, but for things like Coca-Cola or anything, or canned goods. A can, I don't know, because can stays in the can for a long time, and I don't know if I trust too much. But things like Coca-Cola, easily. So I would easily drink that even 1-2 months after. I don't, but I wouldn't worry too much because I know how the process works. You see that in many other things as well, and that's either way. Oh yeah, I never ended up talking about the Argentina thing. So just a casual glance. Remember I mentioned Concordia incident, and I mentioned that before that I tried to take the bus, and this other random bus company in Argentina, Cruzeiro do Norte, wouldn't actually let me board the bus. Here's the deal. The bus didn't show up at all. I tried to get a refund, and they refused to give me the refund. So I reported them to the national company supposed to oversee that. The email received from the government, the email received from the equivalent to this country, the ANTT, which is the Agência Nacional de Transportes Terrestres, which is essentially the transportation unit that cares only for land traffic. He's just like in Argentina, it's separate. It's like the NTSB, but for traffic only, for street, for road traffic only. And except they supervise and overvise the companies that transport goods, so like either goods or passengers. And the issue is, in Argentina, when they did that, they sent me an email from the official federal agency saying that we do not feel like we need to. They wrote, the company couldn't even bother to change, it was in Spanish too, so they don't even have an excuse on that, to change the pronouns. They wrote, the company sent them an email, and they redirected the email and signed it to me. They, as a federal supervisory body, as a federal agency supposed to oversee private companies to prevent them from abusing the customers, relayed the email from the company they're supposed to oversee about a bus that never showed up in video. You got to see that. I don't know if you can get access to that video because the Concordia incident, as you know. But I think you can, because I think that's, no, I don't know. But it doesn't matter. You want to know what happened? Ask around in the city of Phoenix. You know, in the city, just ask around. Look Argentine, look Brazilian. This is the best way to actually get information. Look Brazilian, say nasty things about me, ask around. Simple as that. And as it happened, I have the email. The email I do have, though. I might not have because the email arrived when it was already in Buenos Aires. In Buenos Aires, I kept it. It's very safe and it's definitely available to you. And as I said, we're talking about a federal agency relaying and not even bothering to change the pronouns. But you don't understand. You think it's just them writing the response and they're relaying the response to the company. No, you don't understand. The email writes, the company writes as if they were, I don't remember the details. The company writes as if they were, essentially they wrote as if they were the federal agency, and then they just relabel the thing and ship it. But I think at some point they write we and us, and we did this, and we send the things, so the company is not to be blamed. But how can I say it? It's complicated. They didn't. First off, they was not relayed to me as the company's response. They were relayed to me as an actual email. So that's the company speaking to me. In fact, I have to see it. I don't fully remember the details, and probably there was some type of thing they did to me to struggle a little bit more. Oh, just the type of drugs for a long time that they put on me. But I have before to say, where you have them essentially writing, essentially clearly it was written by the company, as if the company was the agency, and they just pick it up, put it, sign it, and ship it away, which is the law for corruption. I kind of ruined explaining that. I'm quite sure the next time, you know how I forgot words like thought that she was lunching or something, and I said, she's hunting. Sorry. I will have to pause a little bit. See, by the way, ultimately, and as video is still before the end of this video, it's actually quite an interesting times. You witnessed. First off, I'm going to explain that later. I don't remember the words. The way I remember this in my mind is that they essentially relayed something that was written to them by the company. As if the impression was that the company read that to them, and essentially just sign it and ship it to me. And that is corruption. It's not corruption you're uncommon to see in the third world, but and in context of the rest, it's kind of a big deal. But given that, again, much like they borrowed on the same figure as I mentioned about health people here, right? Either that's indeed something that happens all the time, it's so common that it's all like this. They're going to have this guy that works from there, essentially publicly saying, we are very corrupt. We don't like it. Or you're going to say it's a part of this. There's no escape around it. And that's, again, I'm going to show that when I can see that, but I'm just screen recording. When I get the email, then you get to read that with me. And I say, well, it's in the files. It's in the backup files for sure. I think it's also on the other phone. I think I'm going to mention that too much because they're going to charge Tempo with that and be awesome. To do this. I was going to mention something from the other phone, but I'm going to do that later. It has to do with the exit to the mall yesterday. And most importantly for all this, you see the deterioration that it does for the things. Remember I mentioned earlier, while rushing, and they take that as a suggestion, how much you believe me now. And again, I'm just trying to organize to see if I haven't forgot to say anything. And one of the major things is this. I mentioned that earlier, they're going to keep throwing enough things in the air until it can no longer function. Because I said it's actually kind of good that it was bad that it was functioning, because then I could force myself to carry through, because it's my duty to finish this. And at that point, the criminals taking that as a suggestion, and for narcotics to do that to me. Notice how many times I scratch my nose as well? You even notice on each now. Yeah. So there's the point. Now, again, there's nothing bad. There's no one. Not a vehicle with aim right. If you're passing the highway at high speed, you're not aiming. No. Any other thing. Coming from a steady place across, or from a terminal close by. I saw that very close by, in fact. Something similar to that. Not coming from across the street to go do much. Sorry, not coming from vehicles passing by. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say. I have to explain to you before. I've seen the deteriorate section. When I got here, I just came here to walk a little bit and show outside. But now I do. Strange. When I look at a location, I see vibrating. It used to happen before, and they use a lot of those drugs on me. I'll look at the ground, and I'll see the ground vibrating. It's not actually the ground, it's my eyes, obviously. But my issue is, no, this is the ground. What I meant to say was, it's not like it is probably something in my brain, necessarily. It might be. It might be my eyes twitching a little bit because I feel too accelerated, which again, the narcotics is throwing me. But I remember seeing that. So my vision is not that great, but it's normally just blurry. At these times it feels blurry any movement, as it is literally vibrating. If it is in my eyes, you know, if instead of in my eyes it is in my brain, things are throwing us. But for what it's worth, what you get to see is the impact it has on me. And I was saying that's why I rush most of those times. That's why I keep trying to force through. That's why I time to keep force those things through in times like this. Not just that, but also you saw yesterday, right? I said I was going to talk about the Concordia phenomenon, the Concordia incident, not phenomenon. Did I? Then why not? It's because there's so much crimes happening next to me in the mall that I had to prioritize those crimes over this, right? So, not that they didn't even have a bus crime in the way going. And those things, that's just the ones I can notice, because those things also have the effect that I don't notice as I saw happening before. Just pass right through.